Obama regulatory reform plan officially establishes banking dictatorship in the United States. And that's absolutely true. But the Bank of England, the banks in Europe, the banks in Japan are all owned by the same people, and they're all announcing new powers for the Bank of England, new powers for the Bank of Japan, new powers for the Bundesbank, new powers. And it's all for the International Bank of Settlements, IMF, World Bank, openly announcing the new bank of the world you'll pay your taxes to. And I know I've talked about this for years, and we've made films about it, and it's in the Obama deception, but it's really happening now. And the AP and Reuters and the rest of them report on the, quote, banking reform bill and say, oh, the scope of the banking reform bill has some in Congress concerned that it might not do enough. See, their spin is, oh, this might not be enough. Total absolute dictatorship. So, see, they put out fake criticism to make it look like they're criticizing it, but then saying it isn't enough. So somebody reads that and thinks, oh, it isn't enough. Talk about deception within deception. Ladies and gentlemen, for years I've told you we're going to end up with an open world government run by private interest, and this is it. See, what they do is they build continuity of government, national security control grids, under the guise of fighting terrorism and environmental crises and crime. They remove the parliament's and Congress's power. All power is vested in the shadow government, now out in the open. And then the bankers openly pass legislation linking that under their command. Open, complete dictatorship of private banks over the planet. But I'm going to break this down and what life under them will be like coming up after calls. And then how that dovetails with articles like this one I see every day in the news and billboards and TV ads about how cash is dirty, cash is dangerous, cash is criminal. And if you call being able to live your life and being able to work in the underground economy and survive when they're planning to set up a world economy where you will have to be on government welfare and under their control for eugenics operations so they can have their way with you, with the bureaucrat class, that's going to be it. See, folks, with automation and robotics, they can produce the cars and houses and baubles and toys and entertainment for everybody. And then once everybody's got that in their little compact control grid cities, the only jobs for humans is going to be minding other humans, social work, environmental assessments, audits of your home, everything you do categorized and tracked. They're on record saying it, and they're building it. And that's the new economy. Because the globalists have said in their white papers that we've repeated and covered ad nauseum here, that we cover in Endgame, that they don't want us anymore. They don't want large populations anymore. And that they don't need us for manual labor anymore. That we aren't just a cheap commodity now. Life is cheap, as they say. Now it's a liability. Now it's a negative asset to the elite. And so they're going to convert where the only jobs available in the architecture of the economy is police and spies and government minders and tattletale squads and data analysts over the data. This has all been set up. The majority of the college graduates now isn't doctors or even lawyers or mechanics or electrical engineers or computer programmers. It is bureaucrats and minders and spies and Patriot Act compliance as the whole economy is converted where it's the only job you'll be able to have in an engineered monopoly capitalism system. And the bureaucrats are going to be people with the yuppie scum who love lording over people, love being arrogant, love being on power trips. All they care about is that they get to have sex and drink and go skiing and play golf. And they're going to rule over us with an iron fist, and they're going to dispatch the dumbed down, poisoned, mindless slave working class as their stormtroopers. Disgusting, pathetic, parasitic yuppies ruling over the giant blue-collar classes with submachine guns, bashing the brains out of what's left of good people. You want to know what you face? That's what you face. And you're already facing it, but you're going to face it a lot worse. And they're going to glorify the blue-collar tough guys as they beat your brains out with trudgeons on the side of the road, all run by smart-ass yuppies laughing back at headquarters. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, I said I'm going to get into it later. It's just as sure as the nose on my face, it's a hellish future. Where all the big private security companies and tattletale data mining companies owned by the global banks, the whole economy engineered and fed right through their maw, right into their gaping mouth of hell. No more free market, no more owning your own ranch or farm. You're going to have daily visits by parasite bureaucrats. And if you don't get down on your knees and do what they say, they're going to taser you right there and drag you off for re-education. You want to be slaves? You're about to get it. You're going to get it hardcore. You take the Soviet, Nazi, Maoist, Pol Pot systems, put a high-tech MIT Pentagon grid over it. Don't forget all the felons they're hiring, the illegal aliens that are going to be over you, openly filling up the military. You get ready. It's hardcore. We'll guide you and protect you from up here. BBC headline, Bank of England seeks more power. Another headline, Bank of England needs more power. Associated Press, Democrat plan to pass financial overhaul quickly. It goes on to report that it will give the private Federal Reserve, partners of the Bank of England, unlimited executive control over all business, all industry that affects any part of the economy. This is the executive orders we've seen filed over and over again, different variants by every president, including Barack Obama, allowing total dictatorship in the United States. Presidential Decision Directive 51, the accompanying executive order, not rescinded by Obama, but expanding the Bush power, saying Congress has no authority, courts have no authority, states have no authority. John Warner Defense Authorization Act of 2007 reauthorized in the last 2 years over and over again, stating Northcom is preparing to engage the state governments. The DHS document saying veterans, gun owners, libertarians, conservatives, any demonstrators of any type listed as terrorists in the newest public, not even classified, training manual for all U.S. Army personnel. That broke yesterday. ACLU's writing letters. This is really happening. The entire shadow government has been set up and prepared to be openly run by offshore private corporations. Now, I want to explain something. Reading Club of Rome documents, reading CFR documents, reading Trilateral Commission documents, and then even in the last year, reading Times of London, Financial Times of London, BBC, Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine, Newsweek, they've all come out and openly pushed and tried to sell what 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago was in UN documents, in CFR books, and in statements made by globalists, and in policy reports, Rand Corporation documents, British Ministry of Defense documents that we've covered ad nauseum here. How they would bankrupt the world economy by design. How they would bring in a world government run by the bankers because they will have the whole planet in debt to them with fiat, currency, and credit they made out of nothing, backed up by our slave labor. And how they would use the continuity of government systems to make all the nations get in line with their regulation and the payments. Now, the way it was written previously, the bankers always said they would then work through the national security councils of the nations and through the continuity of government national security states and through their agents that they would finance and put into elected positions. Now they're going further, completely bypassing that and attempting to have Congress irrevocably, and of course this is fraudulent so it doesn't stand, Congress has said blacks aren't humans and Native Americans aren't humans and can be killed. The courts have said that. It's null and void. You have an organic, God-given right. If you're an atheist, it's organic, natural law. If you're a Christian or a religious person, it's God's law. But when you hear we say God-given, it means it's above the state. I have a right. I don't care if you say you have a right to kill my kids because you're the government, and you have a right to blow their heads off on national TV. I have a right to fight you to the end, and I don't care if you pass a law saying you can barbecue children on the White House lawn. You don't have that right. You understand? Now, they'd always said they were going to do this through the executive. Now they're just bypassing that and saying the private Federal Reserve, the private Bank of England, the private Bundesbank, they're all passing it simultaneously. First, they say, give us the GDP of the nation and more in just a few months. Every nation on earth that's owned by these private bankers through fraud dumps the entire GDP and more, everything they've got, puts everybody into debt way past their head, way above their heads, to where they could never pay it back. They complete the singularity of the black hole of debt, of fraud, claiming they totally own us. Then they bring in gangster receivership, Northcom military control.